Hi, everyone. Steve Westman. Welcome to this Midweek Audiophile Roundtable. AAA versus digital, but in the end, does it really matter? Let's bring in my partner in crime, or one of my partners in crime, George Borden. So if you were living in Quebec or in Canada, it'd be Georges Borden. That would be how we'd pronounce your name in Quebec in Canada. So I'll just go with the George Borden. Sounds pretty professional, that's for sure. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm excited for this one. I wanted to bring you in so the folks who don't know you sort of, tell us what your experiences are. I mean, we're talking AAA versus digital, so maybe if the folks don't know who George Borden is, give us a little bit of a background on sort of your qualifications and whatnot, if you wouldn't mind.
All right. Well, for the past, 30, 40 odd years, I've been recording, making, writing, engineering, producing music for myself and others, lots of others. Um, and, you know, when I started, it was analog all the way, analog tape. Analog consoles, analog outboard gear. And then around the mid 90s, it started to become, there was always digital things from the 80s on, digital processors, MIDI, and all these kinds of digital devices that were always included in the making of records, but the recording medium was analog tape. And in the mid 90s, Pro Tools came into play, and it was
that a game changer? Game changer, like Pro Tools just changed the game completely, right?
it's just like Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen changing the face of guitar playing. Pro Tools did the same thing, it maybe even on a greater scale than any of those guitar players changed the face of guitar playing.
Well,
And it became so obvious that this is going to make the way we do records from now on is going to be completely different.
Well, we're going to get into that today because I mean, obviously AAA versus digital. I brought a bunch of digital picks today as well, which I think sound fantastic. And I mean, really, if someone didn't tell you it was digital, and we can get into the whole mobile fidelity thing when we didn't know it was digital and everyone thought it sounded great. Now that we know it's digital, apparently it doesn't sound as good. So I mean, it's that perception that we have as well, not knowing or knowing that it's digital versus AA or vice versa. Tara Lewis just put this up here, and I don't know the exact answer, but I think now, if you're in the United States, I think you can start returning those mobile fidelity one steps. I do believe that you'll have to just go to their website. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm Canadian, so the class action lawsuit did not go across the border to the 49th parallel here, so I do not know the answer to that as well. All right, so George, I was looking on Billboard magazine, and before I get to this article, I want everyone to know I'm really excited, and I think you already know this. Next Friday, 1 p.m. Friday, that would be February 23rd. February 23rd, I'm having, this is kind of cool, the Discogs CEO, Kevin Lewandowski, and the COO of Discogs, Lloyd Starr, on the program. So get your questions ready for the executives of Discogs. I think it's going to be lots of fun. And Lloyd Starr, who's the CEO, I found out, was also the president of Vinyl Me Please for a number of years. So interesting connections there as well. So I'm excited about that. So I saw this article, George, the other day on, I think it was yesterday, Billboard.com. If Michael Jackson's estate earns $75 million a year, what do you think that estate is worth? I mean, that's a sane amount of money. The article goes into this. They say it could be worth about $2 billion. Well, why could it be worth $2 billion? Let's have a look. They are crunching the numbers. They say that Michael Jackson's recorded master catalog averages nearly $44 million in annual revenue over the past 3 years. And Jackson, of course, owned his masters. So he likely got them back in the 80s or early 90s when a bunch of Sony megastar artists individually negotiated to eventually reclaim ownership of their masters in exchange for re-signing recording contracts with the major record company. So after subtracting an estimated 20% for distribution and producer royalties, which is a lot for Quincy Jones, that leaves the Jackson catalog with about $35 million. That's a lot of scratch, eh? I mean, that's insane. Yeah. So the publishing from his masters are generated about $22 million a year, while some reports on the potential Jackson estate sale to Sony claim that Jackson didn't write some of the biggest songs, such as Thriller, and particularly every instance Jackson, in fact, listed as a co-writer. So they're saying Jackson's 50% share of his writing, which would put his that take at about $11 million. Interesting. And then from there, there's, you cover versions of the song, samples Jackson's music, that brings another 10% or $12 million. So combined revenue, they're saying 47 million. And if you trade that at what we call a 25 times multiple, that's $1.2 billion. But this is cool. So if it's $2 billion, I mean, it's a 30 time multiple. But take a look at this. Jackson died in 2009. So I found this interesting. The 1976 U.S. copyright revision grants copyright protection for work created after 1978 for the life of the artist plus 70 years. So that means that would give any buyer 57 years to recoup profits from the 30 times multiple. $2 billion Michael Jackson estate. Do you think in 57 years they'll still be using Michael Jackson music and ads, TikToks, whatever else they'll be using to recoup that $2 billion multiple that Sony's going to pay for this thing?
Yeah, I think Michael Jackson's music's going to be around for a long time. A very long time.
I was playing the Thriller album, the One Step Thriller. I actually have it there for the kids last night, and yeah, it still rocks. It's still pretty amazing for 1982.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine now, but in 1985, 1986, he was on such a different level. It was Elvis and the Beatles combined. What Michael Jackson was in the mid 80s, it was incredibly huge.
And think about that. That was before social media, before TikTok, before the internet. And this was just us watching on TV, watching on a 1 hour video program, or if you didn't have cable for Much Music. And we called it, Much Music here in Canada. It was MTV, and in the States. And if you didn't have cable, we'd watch like a 1 hour or half an hour video show that would show these videos. So, we didn't get, other than what the news was, what was going on in the career of Michael Jackson. So, I mean, think about if that was happening during social media times, it'd be sort of like Taylor Swift today, I guess, right? I mean, that's sort of the equivalent.
Kind of. I think even bigger. So I think it's, I try to show people, there was a time where Michael Jackson appears at the Super Bowl, and he pops up out of the bottom of the stage. And, the Super Bowl is well-timed. The halftime show's tight. It's the exact amount of time that's going to happen, and everything's very choreographed. But he was so massive and created such a strange vibe. He pops up out of the stage, and he just stands there for like 2 minutes and doesn't do a thing. He just stands there. And the crowd, the anticipation and the fury just keeps whipping higher and higher, and then he starts performing. I get goosebumps on my arm thinking about that, because it was such a strange phenomenon to see him just stand there and watch everybody. They took it on themselves, and it just got bigger and bigger. It was crazy. And also, let's not forget that Motown. I think it was a Motown.
I wanted to say that because that's when I first really got introduced to Michael Jackson. It was the Motown Awards, 1980. It would have been sometime in early 1983. I remember watching it. It was recorded. It wasn't live, but I remember my whole family watching this. Michael Jackson comes on, Billie Jean comes on, and you see that moon dance, and you see those moves, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, this is something special we're watching.
And the thing is too, is that right before he did that, he was up performing with the Jacksons, and they were doing all this stuff that had been going on since the 60s, all the Motown Jackson 5 hits and all that stuff. And then they walked off, and he said, all right, now let's get into what's happening right now. And then just changes, pop music right there. It's crazy.
There you go. So yeah, Michael Jackson's estate, $2 billion. I mean, I definitely agree with that. So I wanted to front load this a bit. I know everyone likes to get some, we're going to sort of compare AAA to digital, but I wanted to point out something, guys, I found really fascinating. Instead of doing a full video on it and wasting everyone's time, I had a good listen to 3, because we know that the Gaucho, Acoustic Sounds or Analog Productions, UHQ or Gaucho should be coming out momentarily. I don't know when that will be, but I wanted to show listeners and viewers this. This is my MCA audiophile master file series, half-speed mastered Gaucho. I have the Robert Ludwig original here. I mean, there's really not much to see. It's the same cover, right? And I also have the latest one that came out that was cut by Alex Abrush from AAA Mastering. And I want to talk about the differences. And I will tell you, the AAA or the Gaucho, this one here, Universal, the new one that just came out. Here's the label. Mastered by, I guess, cut by Alex Abrush, mastered by Bernie Grunman from the Robert Ludwig equalized tape. This sounds fantastic, George. Honest to God, this is a digital cut and absolutely outstanding. I compared it to the other two that I just showed you. The MCA master file half speed is terrible. I felt the vocals are really sort of set back. If I can use the word blobby for the bass, am I allowed to use that? That's how it sounded on the MCA. And I mean, what a difference. I mean, the MCA just sounded lousy altogether. If I compared it to my original Ludwig, it sounded a lot like the Ludwig, but this definitely had more, I wouldn't say more bass, but it just had more, I think, a little bit larger sound stage, and all in for a digital cut for $40. I think everyone's going to be very happy with this cut. If you can't afford the UHQR, the 45 RPM, this thing kicks ass. I mean, you drop it on Babylon Sisters. I mean, that shake it, you know what I mean? When you hear that, it really comes out in the speakers. So it's really close to the Robert Ludwig cut. I'd say this one just beats it, just because my Robert Ludwig cut, not that it's worn out, it's just doesn't have the depth of sound that this one does. And I just felt, man, for $40, you're getting a treat. And this was really well engineered in 1980. Of course, we all know it won the Grammy for it, and it really lives up to it when it's remastered using today's technology, cut on vinyl. Dude, you're in for a treat for this one. Really good value, digital value, $40. Is that a good comparison? Is that better than doing a video for 20 minutes on it?
Yeah. And I hate to
just don't buy this one.
But Norman just cut to the chase and did a copyright on your blobby bass term. So you can't use it anymore without the consent of Norman Maslow.
When did he do that?
He just did it right now in the chat. He just copyrighted it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a Bernie Sorry, was that a Bernie Master, the Gaucho? No, I think the original was a Ludwig Master, is what I'm trying to say, if I'm not mistaken. And then they used the Ludwig tape that Bernie would have remastered and then given the digital files to Alex Abrush. I think. Again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Ludwig mastered the originals. Maybe not.
We'll get to that too. There's so much, we're putting a lot of weight on the shoulders of mastering engineers that is not, there's so many things that go into the quality of how a record sounds. And I'm glad that we're going to talk about analog and digital, because is there a difference? Yeah, but it doesn't mean one's good and one's bad. Mm-hmm. As you just pointed out right there, you've got an analog cut and a digital cut, and you prefer one over the other. It's completely subjective. It's probably best if we don't know sometimes and just listen and see which one appeals to us on any given day, on any given system, in any given room. It's all good. Yeah, let's go. Let's do this.
So that was a small comparison there. Definitely blobby bass in the MCA. So let's just go back a little bit. PCM, pulse code modulation versus DSD. We know the whole DSD thing. I mean, anyone that didn't know DSD found out about DSD a couple years back with Mobile Fidelity. They're obviously doing a DSD step in their recording or their mastering process as well. So, explain to us sort of the differences. I mean, you got PCM samples versus DSD samples. What's going on with all that?
Just in quick layman's terms.
Layman's quick. We don't need a 2-hour sermon.
Pulse code modulation is based on two factors: sample rate, which gives you frequency response, and bit depth, which gives you dynamic range. Rough. Like there's way more to it than that, but this is just very quick. If you have a sample rate that is 44,100 samples per second, you then have what is called a Nyquist frequency, which is half that sample rate, which tells you what's the highest frequency you can get, which if it's 44, that makes the highest frequency 22K, which is above the ability for any of us to hear. And then if you say 16-bit, you're talking about a theoretical dynamic range of 96 decibels. So from 0 to -96, That exceeds analog tape. It exceeds a lot of people's ability to gauge quiet to loud. So you're talking about a plot basically, and it's almost like making like a what's the program with all the little cells on it? Excel spreadsheet, right? And how many can you go this way, and how many can you go this way, and how smoothly can you draw this waveform, incorporating the quickness of the frequencies going up and down, and how high you can record versus how low you can actually encode and hear. That is the simple way of looking at pulse code modulation.
Now with DSD, and I mean, I'm under the impression that, I mean, when Mobile Fidelity made the decision to basically use their DSD in the process, I'm, maybe it's for the warmth of the recording or the depth or the realism. Would that be a big factor when they decided, okay, we're going to do the DSD step. We need to do it versus the PCM step.
Well, DSD is just a different take on how to record digitally. The sample rate is increased by a huge magnitude.
Well, let's look at that right there. I mean, you look at some of the sample rates. So you get a single rate DSD, that's 64 times sample rate, which is an SACD. Then we got the double rate, which is the DSD 128, all the way to, you got the quad rate, which they're doing right now, the DSD 256. So there you go.
Basically, what you're doing is you're taking the sample rate up so high that you only need 1 bit to show the dynamic range, because what you're basically doing is going, does the next sample go up or down? And that is why you can get away with 1 bit. So whereas with pulse code modulations, the samples are there's so few compared to DSD that you need to be able to show dynamic range that way. Again, this is layman's terms. You increase the sample rate to the point where the bit depth just tells the next sample to go up or down to recreate the waveform, essentially.
And that's the thing, right? With the PCM, there's 16 bits at 44 kilohertz.
That's CD version. Yeah, CD.
Yeah, versus a 1-bit DSD 64, which is the SACD version.
Right.
You can see. So that being said, I mean, in terms of overall sound quality, is there much of a difference you feel between the two formats? I mean, really, I mean, can there be? I mean, how would the human ear, a 50-year-old, 60-year-old human ear, really be able to decipher the differences?
You just got to be if you're in a good room with a good set of speakers. DSD is extraordinarily, I would just say, more accurate, open. The soundstage is better. That increased sample rate just allows, well, a lot of things about it. It's a much, to me, clearer, cleaner reproduction of the waveform than pulse code modulation. Nothing that's going to be a game changer. Like the difference between having, analog tape going to Pro Tools as a recording engineer, but it's enough to go, hey, I would easily, the first time I heard DSD, I said to myself, I would easily store all my masters in this, in this format going forward, because the reproduction was so accurate.
Let me stop you there. So Sony, back in, I think it was the mid-90s, decided to take all their masters and then basically use DSD as an archival to basically store those masters. So, I mean, that's what Sony has done over the last 20, 30 years now.
It was good thinking.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit. So there's people have been asking, Stephen Patrick, this is Stephen George, what carts do you use? I have 2. I can show everyone, I mean, a couple things I'm using right now, and then basically I'm using the Pure Fidelity turntable here, and you can see it right here with the Stratos. You'll see the Stratos cart right there with the tone arm, and I have the Harmony turntable as well. I also have a Riga P6 with an EMEA Pro MC card as well, which I'm using.
I use a Riga. I have 2 Rigas. I got a P2 that I have like as my spare table in the other room, and then I have a P3 heavily modified with groove tracer stuff and speed control. And the cart I use on this one is I have a Riga Exact, and then in the other room I have right now that's loaded with an Audiophile mono cart, just in case I want to listen to mono records. Never pull it out though.
Yeah. So Now you pick some really good sounding digital records, and I brought both analog and digital stuff that I feel sounds really good, because I mean when I've listened to it, I can't really decipher the difference between, oh my god, I know for sure that's analog, or oh my god, I know that's digital. I just think it sounds freaking great, and that's why I play it. So what did you bring today? I'm curious to see your stuff.
All my obvious standards that I always go to.
Rolling
Everybody
Stones,
knows.
probably. Beatles.
Yeah,
obviously.
I got it. Okay, look. I have here, this is from the Rolling Stones box set, the Rolling Stones mono box. Okay. These are DSD, and it's well known that they're DSD, but everybody goes, those are DSD, but they sound good.
Let me see that. Hold on a second. What do you got?
This is from the box set, the mono box, right? And this is all DSD, and it sounds great. I think all the Stones recent records are all digital. And then this is old school. This is probably 90s. This is when in 87, when they sort of collapsed the catalog and they told Capitol, you've got to adopt our original catalog. Capitol put out the first 4 in mono and did exactly what they did with the CDs, which were the first 4 in mono, and then everything after that was stereo. These don't sound bad at all. It's a matter of, the other thing I was going to say is, with the exception of few, almost every Beatle record released since 1987 is digital, except for a few, and it's like they don't sound bad. Now this one, I'm using this as a more sort of a recent example. This is your Canadian Heroes, Rush, right?
Yeah,
from Toronto, Quebec, right? Is that right?
Ontario.
Oh yeah, there you go, Ontario. There you go. This is Snakes and Arrows, produced by Nick Raskalinitz, who started like humble beginnings at Sound City, and went on to be a great producer in his own right. And there's a documentary about this, and they're clearly recording into Pro Tools. This is a sort of a 2000s record. Not too many people were using analog tape. This record sounds great. It sounds phenomenal. And is there an analog step anywhere in here? Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I don't care. It sounds great. I love it. Rush. Love them.
I'm going to show a couple too that I think don't get talked about a lot, but are digital recordings that sound really good, and there's probably not a bad copy out there. A lot probably have it, but this is Tracy Chapman. This is 88 or 80, 87, 88. The Tracy Chapman self-titled. You Got a Fast Car. I mean, I don't think there's a bad copy. I have the CD as well, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. And this is, of course, the vinyl version as well. And then she did her follow-up album, which is the Tracy Chapman Crossroads, which, some actually like this better than her self-titled. But again, both digitally recorded, cut to vinyl. They sound absolutely fantastic. I mean,
people are paying loads of money for those records too. Those OGs, like the originals of those.
These are the originals. These are the 2 originals. And if you look at Discogs right now, on this one, this is actually one of the best-selling albums that Discogs is basically selling right now through their website.
Yep.
Not bad.
No.
And then here's another thing too. Remember a little bit of controversy with this Alan Parsons. This is, of course, this is my is this my original? Yeah, this is my original from '82. This is my Canadian original. But here's the thing: Speaker's Corner, which is basically prides itself with basically being an analog company. Their only cut that's not analog was their Alan Parsons project, and no one complained about it, because there was 2 different masters. There's a digital master and an analog master that they produced for this album. And for whatever reason, Speaker's Corner used the digital master, and I think it sounds fantastic. But no one talks about that. No one says, "Oh my God, it sounds so digital," because it doesn't. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
just my thought.
Charlie White says that pro digital recording sampling rate is usually 48. Well, that was for a long time, that was the highest sample rate we could do. But I could tell you this, there was also that point for a long time where everybody just said, forget it, I'm staying at 44.1 because I don't want to do the sample rate conversion down for the CD. And that was the ultimate goal. I remember, I was working in $1.5 million console.
Yeah.
For 10 years that was all digital, and it was a 20-bit Studer D950 Mark II, and it could go to 48K. The reason that ended up getting put away was because sample rates went higher than that, and this wouldn't do it. But it sounded fantastic. Best console I ever heard. Totally digital.
So here's the thing: the demand for Tracy Chapman's crazy. I mean, obviously after the Grammys, when she led off with the Fast Car, I think I would hope that maybe Tracy decides to get that reissued. That'd be kind of nice to see it come out again on vinyl or on, I guess on I think that would be really nice to see. I think it would be a big seller. Does it have to be an audio? I mean, what is audiophile these days? I mean, everything seems to be in 180 gram. Everything seems to be cut by some of the the best master engineers, the Kevin Grays, the Bernie Grunmans, the Chris Bellmans. So I mean, it is if those type of people get their hands on a Tracy Chapman, I mean, that's audiophile. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 45 RPM cut and a fancy box and all these fancy pictures and everything, or on whatever vinyl. I think with today's technology, I think recutting this one, it would be brilliant. I think it would be a big seller no matter what.
Absolutely. You put it in the hands of the right person that's got the right gear and the right, another thing that's important. A lot of the reason that these mastering engineers are successful, and we talk about them, is not because of the gear that they're using, and not whether they're using tubes or analog or digital or whatever. It's more because they have a feel for the music and an appreciation for the historical perspective, and they take the time to understand, where does this record fall, in historical, sense, and what do people think about this record already, and now you've set a level, a bar to meet or try to get over. So they're smart people, and they're good at what they do, all of them.
So Michael Lynch was saying DSD is great. I used it a lot when it was first released, and it was very close to the analog tapes to his ear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The big problem with DSD is that there's not as many, like in terms of, say, recording multi-track, right? Okay. Like making a record with DSD is almost impossible. There's not as many options for workstations. There's not as many options for plugins, which would be, processors or effects and things like that. That's the big problem with DSD. But I'll tell you something, working at a high resolution pulse code modulation, 9624, is going to get you where you need to be just the same. Right. But recording, taking an analog master and putting it to DSD in a stereo function is there's nothing better really for preservation to me.
So I wanted to touch upon something. I know Patrick Piebethal's done like a blind shootouts on Bob Marley's Exodus. He's used obviously the UHQR, the Abbey Road Miles Shoal half speed. I have both. I'm holding up the half speed here. Now this one's come out a lot as this is a digital half speed cut by Miles Shoal. I want everyone to understand the one thing, and I did talk and confirm with Miles Shoal. He basically used Ted Jensen's mastering and pretty much cut it verbatim to what Ted Jensen's mastering file is. He might have did a little de-essing on it, a little bit of adjusting, but it's pretty much what sounds like Ted Jensen's mastering, and that's what was used to cut this to a vinyl at half speed. So it sounds great, and I think even Miles will admit that Ted Jensen has a lot to do with this, and he's from Sterling Sound, so that's one of the big reasons.
And let's be clear about the division. They both mastered it.
Yeah.
Right. In the division was that what Ted Jensen had done was taken an existing mix or version of the record and processed it through equalization, dynamics processing, maybe some noise stuff, whatever those things are, and then created a new file that Miles Shoal then brought in and ran through his system and cut on a lathe. That actual act of cutting to the lathe is just as crucial as the things. It's not, they're both equally robust in the possibilities of make or break a record, and they both should be applauded for their job that they did.
And the bass sound wasn't blobby on this, just so you know. I think it sounded very good.
Norman, there's 25 cents coming to you.
I have Blobby though. If you go back to one of my videos a few years ago, I used Blobby, and I can't. And someone commented, "What's this Blobby mean? You're talking audiophile." I mean, well, it's Blobby. I don't know, but yeah, it sounds really good. Then so I got more. I've got way more, but let's go back to I think the whole DSD PCM. Kevin Gray. I mean, talking to Kevin Gray. Oh, here's this. Look at this. Norman wants money from me already. So I guess I need to up his appearance fee on the Audiophile Roundtable, huh? From 10 cents to 25 cents going forward. Maybe that will make him happy. So what was I getting at? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking Kevin Gray on DSD.
Yeah, I talked to Kevin Gray, and he says he's never cut anything from DSD to vinyl before. He's never used that process, only PCM. So I mean that I found that quite interesting. And I don't even know if that Bernie Grunman or Chris Bellman does a lot of DSD. I don't think it's one thing they do. I think it's really a mobile Fidelity thing, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the big player in that.
So what Mobile Fidelity is not doing is they're not being given DSD. So look at what does Kevin Gray do? He gets sent a master from the record label, right? And they say, make this into whatever we want, be it a CD or a lacquer that we can make records. That's not what Mobile Fidelity does. Mobile Fidelity puts a suitcase together with a DSD recorder in it and a tape machine, and then they roll to the place where the master is stored, right? Because these places aren't giving up the masters.
Well, so everyone knows Sony is not going to basically ship masters out to anywhere. You've got to go to Battery Park? I think that's where it is. It's where this all that's called.
Is it the underground thing? Is that what that was? Yeah. So they go there, they look at they verify the master tape is in their hands, and then they transfer it as meticulously as they can with the time they're given to DSD so they can take it back to their facility, right? And now they have unlimited tries. You would never get those records. You would never get those records done that way. And I know people don't like some of them, and that's all arguable. That's the other thing too. I'm never going to say one's better than the other. It's totally subjective. There's no fact based.
We've talked about this. It's subjective to your mood. It's subjective to your room. It's subjective to your speakers, your amp, your cart, everything that's going on. Your emotions in your head that day. I mean, right? That's what it's going to be. Yeah. So I mean, and then back in the 70s and 80s when Mobile Fidelity was using Stan Ricker as their master engineer, I heard, I mean, maybe it's not rumors, but I mean, I heard that he basically would make a copy of the master and then use that copy to cut it to half speed, because then he can make adjustments and not worry about screwing up the master tape. I mean, I believe that's probably what happened.
Yeah, look, imagine you're holding in your hand the 1/4-inch master
of the Beatles,
which
he did. So I can't imagine them not making copies of those master tapes, which he did for that box, and then be able to take some time to do his magic on them,
or like Stairway to Heaven or something. And then also let's some of those tapes have edits, and it's not the tape maybe that's even bad, but it's the little sticky tape on the back that is turned into like sludge, and it's stuck in a couple layers or stuck together, and you're like, now you're holding the master of A Day in the Life, and there's like some gum stretching between the two layers. You don't want to mess with that any longer than you have to. That's history. What would you feel like? It's like total Charlie Brown. You don't want to, I'm not going to fall for that again. No, go ahead, kick the ball. No, I'm not going to do that again. But it's like, but you're holding that thing in your hand. It's like but the other thing is you want to have the freedom to try as many things as you can to try to get it into a place that you think.
And that would make a lot of sense that Ricker did that back in the 70s. It makes a lot of sense to me because I like some of this stuff, even if it's a Smiley EQ and whatever. There's some great stuff. I mean, I like the sound of it. VQR is saying, is there any evidence that major labels actually archive in DSD? Seems most anything they release to mastering engineers is at 24/192.
That's absolutely correct. Any evidence that they do, I guarantee that there's evidence that some do and some have, but that is a pretty new architecture compared to pulse code modulation. So if you go back into, we're talking about records that might have been digitized originally back in the 80s and the 90s, right? The DSD wasn't around for them then. So if they had the wherewithal at that point to get a slightly higher sample rate and a better bit depth, and again, I'll take 24 bits over a higher sample rate any day of the week. That's because that's your dynamic range, and that's going to show you the changes in the amplitude of those frequencies. And if you have high quality converters, you can roll with 44.1 24-bit. That that's the thing. It's counterproductive, but the worse your converter, the higher your sample rate should be, because the higher the sample rate, it sort of alleviates the problems with a bad Nyquist filter on a cheap converter. So that's another thing to contemplate as well. Anyway, too inside, I'm sure.
I'd love to. Steve, how about have a show about best selling original albums? Yes, I definitely. That's one of my ideas. We got lots going on here on the show, but definitely we'll have one of those for sure. We do a lot of the budget stuff, a lot of the budget audio, like the last show we had. A lot of that stuff that we showed, some of that was original albums as well. So we'll definitely.
And that's a funny thing too, is that I have some records that I bought, say, in 1998 that cost me $2 that now are worth, $80. And I considered them to be budget OGs back when I bought them.
How much do you think this cost me? This is my Canadian. This is, $8, $9, $10 album back then. I mean, now what's it worth? I don't know. And it's in really good condition.
$200, $300 people are paying for that thing now.
So yeah, there you go. But yeah, I'd love to do a show like that. I've got more to show now. I don't know how much you know about. I'm going to show you this one. This is the CBS. This is the Mastersound audiophile pressing Toto.
Great record.
Great record. But what do you know about their whole audiophile half-speed extended range recording process? Do you know? You're familiar with this?
Yeah. I think I have I think I have the Supertramp one, the Breakfast in America one.
Here's the one that everyone wants.
That's the one.
This is the one because this is the right one. I think it's the what is this, HC33453, whatever. This is the one where the RIAA code is correct, the equalization is correct. Where the one in 1980, they didn't have the correct equalization on it, so it apparently doesn't sound as good. But I found this. This is obviously this is original. I've had it for a while, but take a look. I got this here. Introducing what's it say here? The CBS Mastersound series. So they use the master tapes. They basically say in here they're using the master tapes for this, and I just want to read this to everyone because I wasn't sure if they had a digital step for these things. I've heard mixed reviews on it as well, but basically I'm just trying to see where it says it here. He goes, yeah, I'll hang on a second here. I just want to see it. Probably won't be able to find it now, but it does say it. There's a lot here, but these are from the master tape. So the CBS half-speed series from the master tapes.
Now this goes back to that idea of making a copy with half-speed, and
of course it was a copy of the master.
Well, because like Miles said, right, he takes the original master that he's given, he runs it through the equalization stuff and does all that stuff, reprints a new version of it, but he's doing it digitally, and then runs that at half-speed. Now, if you go back to the tape idea, if you're doing it by tape, you're going to take the original tape, you're going to run it, you're going to do your stuff to it, make a new tape, cut that down to half speed and cut it half to the lid. So you would end up with that. Unless, of course, you're going to run that original master, take your decisions, and then cut all of it down to half. That's going to be very difficult to do.
All right, so I found it. So in half-speed mastering, they're saying here, normal mastering is done in real time. No shit, right? Which means that the master tape moves at the same speed it did during the recording sessions, and the lacquer spins at the standard 33. Obviously, with half-speed, it's obviously half the speed.
And the tape would either be 30 IPS or 15 IPS.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see here if they even say that in here. That doesn't say that. But again, I
guarantee you that the tape they were given was either 15 inches per second or 30 as the master tape, and then they're running that's the normal speed. It's one of those two. Guarantee it.
And it even says in here, it goes down. In addition to recording made from a digital master tape, the Mastersound series includes special half-speed remastered of high-quality analog masters selected for the artist's merit and sonic quality.
Yeah. In other words, we're starting with something that already sounds good, so we can then pat ourselves on the back for.
I like these. I like these series. I like this. I mean, I think this is a great sounding one. This is my, of course. This is Pink Floyd, of course. We know that one, and then I have this one as well. Another classic.
Ah, yeah. There's another good sounding record.
Yeah, it's a great sounding record. Not blobby on the bass. I think it sounds really good for a half-speed master. And if you're a Mobile Fidelity fan, this is one of those ones where they don't think they had the proper license for it, so they had to basically pull back. They had pressed a bunch of these and had to pull them back or get them back from the record company or the record shops because they didn't have the license. So these are rare. You can probably get them on eBay or see them listed on eBay for $2,000 to $5,000. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's good. You got a good stock of those.
I like I like these ones. I mean, again, there's two different ones. Don't get I think it's the 1980 one that has the equalization problem. This is the improved one. I think this is 82. It came out. Someone might be able to, when you don't have Google in front of you, it's hard. But this is just from memory as well. So that's the thing. And so I've got more digital. But go ahead.
Well, there's a little debate going on over there, kind of comparing the Betamax and VHS. It goes to show you that sometimes the lesser format wins out.
I remember that as a kid. So this is a thing. So some families had Beta, some families had VHS. Our family had a VHS, and I remember one of my friends. I'd go over to their house, and his dad was really into hi-fi, and he was trying to say, "Oh no, Beta is the best thing. It's got the best picture quality," and it made me feel like crap. So it's like, well, I got this VHS, and look at how big your VHS tapes are compared to the Beta. And remember, during news broadcasts, when they'd go live on location, they would record on a Beta tape as well. It was never the VHS. Because of course the overall the overall quality, of course, and it was more compact.
The movie industry has a way of sorting those things out a lot quicker than the music industry. The music industry will fight forever until everybody goes broke, and then nothing, everything falls apart.
And that was the thing, right? Sony owned the rights of Beta, and they didn't want to give up the rights to Beta, and that's why Beta sort of just basically slowly disappeared from the universe.
That's right. VHS became the standard, and we've seen those format wars in music all the time. We saw it with CD. That's Sony Philips, right? We saw it with a funny thing. You could play back all the way back in. I remember in 1999, you could play back 96K 24-bit stereo pulse code modulation in your home through your DVD player. DVDs have always had the capacity to play a straight up 96K 24-bit file, and it sounded fantastic. I had Coltrane's Blue Train, and it was Classic Records. Classic Records was releasing records like that. So you just put it in like it was a CD player, hit play, and it would just play the music right through your home stereo system. It sounded fantastic. Didn't take off. Everybody wants mini disc.
So U-matic, Stephen from the Buck Stops here. Was this not recorded U-matic? This is the Nightfly in 1982. Was this not a U-matic digital recording? Using those tapes?
Using that format maybe as I would think that the reel-to-reel, the open reel dash machine would be what the multi-track was recorded on. Whether or not they mixed it to a U-matic tape, which I think is again, I'm wrong, the big cassettes, right?
Yeah, they're the big cassettes. They almost look like Beta cassettes, I think. But again, this is my original 82 Canadian pressing. I don't think there's a bad original pressing. This is a Robert Ludwig cut out there. I had Andrew Slarity on. Andrew was on last week when we were doing our budget audiophile, and he texted me a few days ago, and he picked up an Australian pressing of this. He says it sounds fantastic as well, which you can get for cheap. And it says it uses the same plates as the original, if I'm not mistaken.
And a note about that record, as in a professional realm, that record sort of took over Asia as the official tester record of many systems.
Well, it's true. I mean, we talked about Michael Jackson at the top when he was touring. You can see that, IGY
there you go.
Was the song that was used by Michael Jackson's crew when they were testing all the gear and all the speakers prior to him coming out. So, that was the song they used.
Yep, absolutely.
If anyone's listening, this is Donald Fagen's Nightfly. So Michael Jackson's crew would have used IGY as the test song to basically test all their equipment, that's
thousands of engineers used IGY. But it used to be Peg and Black Cow, but then it became IGY.
So why do you think they use IGY? Why do you think it was used?
It's the first song, and usually that opening track, it just has a lot of movement. It has a lot of good ways to test. When you're trying to test a system, you're not necessarily trying to find a good song. You're trying to find one that has a lot of dynamic range, a lot of rhythmic qualities, because the start and stop of the notes, and you know, that's the What a Wonderful World This Would Be, right? That's that song, right? That's the lyric of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's got that sort of like it's got the good background vocals. It's just a Steely Dan production. It's the same thing with like Peg, with all those harmonies that Michael McDonald does, or Black Cow, which has that, you know, that opening with that, you know, what's like a clavinet sound or something like that,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, those
Here's
sounds.
Tim from University of Val, recorded, mixed entirely in a 3M digital 32-track and 4-track machines at Soundworks Digital Audio Video Recording
There you go.
Studios in New York Village Recorders. Yeah, I mean, it's such a great recording. You know, the immortal Nichols, I guess they called him. I mean, was Roger the Immortal Nichols. I mean, just amazing.
You know, now when I say DASH, that stands for Digital Audio Stationary Head. So you had open reels just like you do, you know, on a 2-inch machine, but they were 1/2 inch usually, and the tape was going by a stationary head that was encoding onto the tape. So open reeled, it looks just like your normal reel-to-reel machine, those big DASH machines. So.
Well, Tim, I'm still going to give you credit. I don't care if it's on the back cover. Thank you. I just don't. I'm not the back cover. I mean, I got it right in front of me. I guess I could read it, but yeah.
If you see that on an album cover that they're proud enough to tell you exactly how it was done, you're probably in for a pretty good sounding record, because
we know it is. I mean, we know it is, absolutely. Oh, here's another thing. Did Brothers in Arms use a Sony Dash?
I don't know the specific machine, but I'm pretty sure that was a digital recording. It could have been Sony. Sony was pretty expansive in terms of, it kind of became the Sony Dash machines became pretty much ubiquitous, sort of like the Studer.
Yeah. VQR, exactly right. No matter what one thinks, a digital Nightfall is well recorded. You can test and positioning and dynamics really easy with it as well, and which we were mentioning. That's why, you know, obviously Michael Jackson's sound crew would have used that for that reason as well, for the positioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, especially IGY, it's such a complete song in terms of everything that you hear. I mean, if you listen in your headphones as well, it's kind of a trippy experience as well.
Well, you know, the thing to note about digital, when the crossover came, when, you know, they kind of wheeled out the analog machine and put the digital machine in, and they said, okay, guys, go about your business. You don't have to align this. It's going to be automatic. Just turn it on and go. But what was happening was that it wasn't doing some of the things that analog tape did. So even though you were using the same techniques out in the room, and you were doing the same techniques on the board, it wasn't coming back with the way that analog tape would, which would add compression and harmonic content. So what you had to learn, and all the engineers, there was a curve. You had to learn to do that stuff on the way in. And there was that question about, I think you were asking me about analog EQ in the recording process, using coloration devices that could give you those qualities on the way to the tape. It just required the engineers to make adjustments about what they did before they hit the tape, because the tape wasn't going to give you any of those benefits back. You had to kind of make it happen on the way. And that's the big deal at the beginning of digital.
I was just about to say, yeah, Ry Cooder's Bop Till You Drop was the very first pop album that was recorded digitally. I believe there was I want to say a classical music record that was recorded digitally. That was the first one. But in terms of pop, it was Ry Cooder. Absolutely.
Yeah, and classical were early adopters. Classical recordings were early adopters to digital, way early, 70s, right? And it made sense, because there was no hiss, and they could get the dynamics
and that's the thing I enjoyed too. So I went from, obviously, you know, growing up with records, and all of a sudden in mid 80s I get my first CD player and CDs. I couldn't believe it. There was no distortion. I didn't hear any hiss. I didn't have to turn the record over. I could listen to it straight for 40 minutes or 38 minutes. I mean, to me, it was a real game changer back in the mid 80s. And I mean, obviously we know why. I mean, from 86 all the way up until last year, I mean, the CD was the biggest selling physical production out there. So, I mean, now that we see vinyl coming back, and I think the one reason for vinyl coming back is I think you're getting back to just enjoying the music, being able to have a tangible thing in front of you, being able to read the liner notes and sort of enjoy it and be part of it. And that's what I really enjoyed about records when I was younger as well. I mean, getting my first Beatles record, Revolver, and just studying the front cover for hours and hours while I listened to this record and just being in awe of everything, and then flipping that Revolver album over and seeing the four of them in sunglasses in the studio, sort of just, looking, I don't even know what they look like, clowning around, or just, looking like they're having fun anyway. So, I mean, that was the experience I had. I mean, today people that stream don't get that experience. You just basically, press a playlist and there it is, right? I mean, just go for it.
It's a whole different experience. But it's all good as long as we're enjoying it,
So I think so far, I mean, I think when we started this, we're like AA versus digital, but in the end, does it really matter? I mean, the song by Linkin Park, I think it was, doesn't it really matter, right? I don't really think it does, because as long as, you look at prime example, IGY, Donald Fagen, Nightfly. That's digital, man. That sounds freaking amazing. I mean,
a lot of them. Oh, and Stefan, I have been in the studio with Bob Margoloff.
Where is it? He asked you that somewhere?
Yeah, right there.
So who is Bob? He was
talking to somebody else, but
and for the viewers that don't know, who would he be?
Just an awesome, a high end purveyor of all things sonic and high quality. Let's just put it that way. In terms of mixing techniques, in terms of surround placements, and all, just a badass engineer type person. But I wouldn't say engineer as much as I would just say just a genius at
So here's my question: are people returning the MoFis because they don't sound good, or are they just because they can't? Because really, these MoFis, if you've ever heard of, if this is my Monk Stream, this is a great sounding one step, by the way, everyone. It's fucking fantastic. And of course, the Michael Jackson Thriller, I do like the sound of that as well. Some say it's a little bit softer than maybe the original or the CD version, but these are some great sounding records. And as long as it sounds good, does it really matter? And that's sort of what we're talking about today. And I'll get to a couple things. Another digital recorded album that sounds great. I've got 3 different copies, and I'm waiting for the Atlantic 75 45 RPM cut. This is In Excess Kick. I know this album. I went to see In Excess live a few times. It was in front and center for their first go round when I lived in Winnipeg. This is the Miles Shoal 45 RPM cut of In Excess Kick, and recorded digitally, half-speed mastered. This is a great sounding record, guys. The original sounds really good, but from a dynamic point of view, sounding, I like the sound of this 45 RPM cut. So I'm going to order the Atlantic 75 and do an interesting comparison to see if there's much difference between the Miles Shoal. Again, this is a digital recorded album as well, so not analog.
And then another thing to note about records, especially around in that time in the 80s and stuff, the choices they were making musically also added to that sort of thin, sort of brittle production style. It wasn't the fault of digital. There was choices made starting at the beginning of the 80s where people were getting away from guitars and trap drums, and they were going into synthetic drum sounds, synthesizer sounds, or overproducing the sounds to the point of they didn't sound like regular sounds anymore.
Yeah.
The Beatles were even doing that. Don't make this sound like a guitar, make it sound like a saxophone or something like that. And it just kept progressing. And as the instrumentation choices changed,
and yes, John, the Rolling Stones is DSD. That's one of the rare ones that is DSD as well. And I did confirm that with Miles Shoal a while back. Probably everyone knows, but yeah.
Yeah, I showed that earlier. There it is.
So the In Excess Kick, Bob Clearmountain was I believe the producer engineer on this one as well. So he's produced some really great stuff, and I think this is all in all, even the original that I have sounds great, and this just brings it up just a notch. So I think probably because it's a 45 RPM cut.
Yeah.
I think these go for a lot of money these days too. It's kind of stupid, crazy. When you can get the original, I have the original. You get the original in sales bins at your local record store probably for $10 still. They're not going for a lot of money.
Oh, it's a great, and I think, yeah, I hope that, it's funny, even back in the late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, everybody was going after this loudness thing, right? Everything was
So that was the loudness wars of the
right.
mid. Was it the 90s? The loudness wars? Is
It
that when
was
that happened?
started at the end of the 90s going into the
Yeah.
2000s, and by the mid 2000s it was out of control. But yet people have learned to kind of like get past that, pull back, realize that there is something to be had with dynamic content, and not everything should be in your face like a soda commercial at all times.
Yeah.
The best way to surprise somebody is to follow something very quiet with something, and get all of that stuff in there. And I think what hopefully we'll get past the MoFi gate
Well,
thing.
that's and I was going to say that. So I mean, again, like are people just basically giving back their MoFis because they can at this point? I
Yeah,
mean, I think that's probably what it is.
give them to me. I'll buy them from you.
Yeah, but you're getting full value. I mean, you can return. I mean, Paul Simon or what was it? The one I can't remember which one. Oh, Muddy Waters. I mean, you can buy that in the aftermarket for $65, or you can give it back to MoFi and get your full 125 back. So, I mean, I think that's what people are doing at this point. But it's for the love of the music. I mean, that's what it doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, prior to this thing coming out, everyone was, you go into the different groups, and I'm part of the MoFi groups and all the different chat groups. Everyone was praising these one steps as being the second coming, and they sound really good. They really do. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, it's got a DSD step. They never told us. I'm returning these things. They sound like shit.
And even the standard MoFi, Miles Davis and Dylan, everybody goes, "Oh, those ones are great. Those are my best ones." And it's like, all right. But are you going to return a Miles Davis, that might be the best sounding version of it that you have because you're mad because there was a DSD?
I have a feeling probably the ones that are going to return the most for MoFi would probably be the Paul Simons, because they're not worth a lot in the aftermarket, and of course the Muddy Waters will be the ones that get returned if you have that most people returning it. I mean, here's the thing, right? No one knew that Abrascus was had a DSD step. No one knew that. No one. Not one person is going to return the Abrascus.
I've heard 10 people say that is the best sounding record ever made. Like that pressing is like the best possible. Like people are spending like $2,000 on that record. It's out of control. It's like doesn't that end the idea that the digital step has anything to do with it sounding good or bad? No, it doesn't. Come on. It's all good. What's Abraxas like? Do you have it? Do you have that?
I don't have, and this is so funny. I remember when it first came out, I'm like, holy crap, this is a lot of money for a record. And we got to remember that, put it into context. In 2016, I'm buying records, and I'm like, okay, I have a young family. I'm just doing things. It was a lot of money, 99 US, I think it was back then. It was limited to 2,500. I'm like, I'll get it. It won't sell out. I'll deal with it later. And of course, I forgot about it, and then over a couple of years later, it sold out. I mean, even when it went live, it didn't sell out the first day. There was no FOMO with the one-step mobile Fidelity Abrascus. There's absolutely no FOMO with this thing. It was there on the site for a long time before it sold out.
If you would have bought 10 of those, you could put one of your children through college.
That's true. Who would have known? And there was no quantity. You could just buy as many as you want. Oh, I was going to buy 10 of these for $99, and but that's hindsight. That's like buying Apple stock at $40 and holding on to it today. I mean, we don't know these things, but yeah. So I don't think anyone's returning a Abrascus one step. That's not happening. I think the Paul Simons, the Muddy Waters are the two big ones, just based on looking at what they could sell them for in the aftermarket. That would be definitely the two that are going.
And to get back to this thing about they lied, first of all, I've still yet had anybody send me the actual literature where they denied it.
Full stop you there. So in the literature, it doesn't, but where the screw up was, and I've had viewers that actually, because customer service for MoFi was not on the same page as head office or California. So they were told one thing, and they stuck with that. So what was happening is customer service was telling people, if they were asked, it's cut from the analog tapes. They didn't realize there was a digital step. So there was a communication issue between Sebastopol, California, head office Chicago, and of course customer service. And that's where it lies. Because I've seen emails from customer service, basically from my viewers sent me, showing that. So that's where the screw up is. It wasn't in the literature.
Okay. And so at this point in time, They have done the things that we would ask somebody to do when they do the mistake. At least in America, where the class action suit is, they're giving you your money back if you want it. Number two, they are now completely giving you every single facet of the cutting information,
which they started, and that was one thing I called for right around that time as well, and they've done it.
That's what you want somebody to do when they make a mistake. If they screw up, you go, okay, here's what we want. And they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do it. And they took a big hit in the sense of, their reputation and all this stuff.
And right here, drag racing saying it. It's a fact they still hide and lied about it. Well, they did, but not on the literature. If they called customer service, that's where I really think it was a management problem. I really think that was where the screw up is.
So what the engineers are doing, it's like, let's just say, yes, it is about the fact that they lied. Okay, so what do you want them to do about it? They're giving you your money back if you want it. They're now being completely transparent about the source and the signal chain about everything. All I'm saying is you're okay. You're right. They weren't completely upfront with it. But let's move past that, and let's not judge the record based on whether it's got a DSD step. Let's base it on its sound. And it's not like people haven't been complaining about analog records that they made. I've got the Beatles box set in that room over there, and everybody hates that. I don't have that much of a problem with it. And I've got 250 Beatle records. But what I'm saying is, like, even there's choices that the engineer makes has nothing to do with DSD. I would just be more like, this record doesn't sound good. Forget about whether it's digital or not, whatever,
Hit that thumbs up button, guys. It really helps us. Hit that thumbs up. I want to see a lot of them. Thank you. I mean, in the end, it's all about, your preference, your systems. AAA, digital, it doesn't really matter. I got a couple more here. We're going to go through some more. This is limited to 5,500. This is War's greatest hits. Kevin Gray, this is his first first experiment with his all valve cutting system. Now, if you haven't got this, this is a fantastic album. I was lucky enough to get this. This is from I guess it was, what company was this? I can't remember the name of the company. Was it Plaid Records or whatever the name of anyways, I got this for the retail price of $30, and I'm really, really happy with this. Sounds fantastic. Yeah. Again, this is probably another one that was really recorded really well too, which really helps. This is a Kevin Gray all valve, although he didn't use the same console he used for the Kirsten Edkins albums. It wasn't truly all valve, but he uses the other electronics that have the valve components to it.
And I'm pretty sure it's going for cheaper than Abraxas.
And it sounds fantastic, and it's AAA.
Yeah, and it's tube cut. And for everything that I've never heard anybody say anything even remotely negative about that record right there.
You can't. Okay, the only thing negative you can say here. This is the only. I'll show you the negative you can say about it. Let me just see. Because if you're
going to be artwork, are you going to talk about artwork?
I'm not talking about artwork. This is the only negative. Because it's colored gold vinyl, 5,500 limited edition.
And you think that because of the gold, it's taken away one notch possibly of quality? Maybe
I don't think so. I don't even think so. I think it sounds freaking fantastic. I really do. I don't. Why wouldn't it?
It doesn't match your turntable. Is that why was that a negative?
I'm not saying it's a negative. I think it's fantastic. I really do. Right. AAA. It sounds great. And I know I've had other viewers say there's other cuts out there that sound really good as well. But the War Greatest Hits sounds fantastic. Kevin Gray valve cut. Yes. Absolutely awesome.
War's got an incredible catalog from start to finish.
So good.
It's such a good catalog. There's a box set too that you can get that's decent. It's decent. The box set's decent and it sounds good, but you get all of them in, at least the 5 core, 6 core records of War, not Eric Burdon War, but just War. Great catalog.
I like this. This is interesting. I think one of the viewers, Gordon, Gordon, is it Borden? You're Gordon Borden?
It could be Gordon. GH, okay. It looks like Gordon.
Let me read it. So would you say people can't hear digital without comparing to the source? Seems digital has gotten to the point where it can maintain most all of it, what's on tape or mic line in.
Okay, I believe that it is possible to hear digital when it's done poorly.
Example?
Low sample rates, bad converters, less than desirable sources to begin with. I believe that it is possible to, if you compare a not so good digital cut to an analog cut, you will hear something that makes you go, that's digital. I can tell that's digital. You're not hearing the samples go by. It's nothing like that. It's more of a hollowed out, airy sound that's lacking that that harmonic richness that you get on every hit of a drum or every strum of a guitar.
So Charlie White wants some examples of albums that you're just explaining sound like that.
Okay. Right down here, I have a record. Nobody likes this record but me. It's the drummer for Queen, his solo album called Fun in Space. Came out in 1982. I have the original Elektra release, and then they just redid the catalog, just like the Queen catalog. I believe it's done sort of similarly. The Queen catalog, I'm not digging the new versions of it. I don't think it's the mastering of it. I think it's the way that they were archived to begin with. I think that the way that they archived them did them a disservice. So those ones in particular, especially these days, I have trouble listening to it. It gets, it gets into the weeds. But to me, what happens when it's a bad digital copy or a bad digital cut, it just lacks a harmonic richness. It's not like you don't hear bass. You hear bass, you hear treble, you hear the mid range, you hear the voice.
Is it blobby?
It's sometimes blobby, but what it really comes down to is what are called micro dynamics. There's quiet parts of songs and loud parts of songs over the course of time, and that is macro, large dynamics. But the micro dynamics are like this right here. Here's one hit. Okay, now that clap, the moment that the two hands hit, that has a transient. And then when my hands are pulled apart, the sound of the clap rings through the room and bounces around and comes back to this microphone. And you're hearing that whole thing is one note, one sound, and that's a micro dynamic. The amplitude and the frequencies that come back over that one sound, they get a harmonic richness to them when they're hitting analog tape that doesn't happen with digital. Love you too.
Thank you. So here's an analog, and I think this is an analog cut, but I think it has a lot to do with the recording process. What were you showing us there?
OG Sade right there. Someone just said it in the chat. Went by. I got Sade sitting right there on the next up to play.
I missed that.
Someone said it in that thing.
Which album is it that you own?
I have the one, the big hit one.
Diamond.
No, Promise, right? It's got.
Okay. I have that somewhere. Okay, here's an example. I have this one, a really well recorded album. This is Heart Streamboat Annie. Now this is my Nautilus Super Disc cut. I think this is half speed. Yeah, this is half speed mastered. It's on this Mushroom label.
Yep.
You see that there? This is it. I mean, this is the half speed Nautilus. I have the original as well. This is fantastic. And to top it off, this is recorded in Vancouver, Canada, just down the road from me right here back in, what was it, was this the 1970s when this came out?
Little Mountain, that would have been 76, 77?
Yeah. It was produced by a guy named Mike Flicker. Here's the, yeah. Anyways, this is and I have a lot of the Nautilus half-speed cut, and some of them are hit and miss, but man, this is a fantastic album. And it even has the, you could have bought a t-shirt back then. Look at this, Nautilus recordings. I mean, you can buy a t-shirt and, you get for $4.50. I mean, back in the day.
I have the Cars first album done that way. The Nautilus first Cars record.
Yeah. And I have, and I pulled this. I have an original Canadian pressing. I want to make sure this, Canadian. This is Candio original. Still in the shrink. It's still in the shrink.
Yeah. It's a good.
This is fantastic, and this is coming out in March. So this would be a good comparison with the Rhino High Fidelity. I'm not sure, what Kevin, what Kevin's going to do different. But I mean, if he leaves it close to this, you're in for a treat. This is a fantastic sounding album. A lot of Cars fans, this is their favorite. This is their favorite album, better than the self-titled. Candio.
It's a tough call.
It is a tough call.
That first album's note for note, back to back. That's a great record.
Well, that first album, like I said, is almost a great. We've talked about this before. It's almost a greatest hits album, right?
Kind of, yeah. Absolutely.
It's amazing. Now, I wanted to show you one other thing I thought sounded really good. And this is, I pulled it out. have a look at this. This is my, and this is done by Cooking Vinyl.
Be
and
careful.
Again, this is a promo set that was given to me a couple years back by Cooking Vinyl. So thank you, Jeff, for that. This is a Miles Scholl half-speed mastered. You can see here the full catalog. These are great sounding records, by the way. These are fantastic sounding records.
They're a Japanese company, I think, are they?
Cooking Vinyl's out of the UK. This came from the UK.
I know that I remember XTC was with them for a short period of time.
Yeah, and I mean, and this box itself too. I mean, if you want sort of the extras, comes with a pretty cool book too, and explains every single album and gets into details about the recording processes of the album as well. And you know, just quickly show you guys this.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
I had the fortunate circumstance to be able to have a chat with Alan Parsons, and stand-up guy, knows what he's talking about, knows what he's doing.
That was really cool. I mean, Alan Parsons, if anyone doesn't realize, part of the Beatles, was part of Let It Be, part of Abbey Road, is what I guess an assistant engineer back then. But if you watch the Let It Be, I guess the rooftop concert, you'll see they pan to there's a door, the door where they go in, and you'll see Alan Parsons right in the door there during the concert, just standing there watching and listening. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
And he kind of did that little album Dark Side of the Moon, which was
1973. That's 50 years ago. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't think we even need to talk about Dark Side of the Moon. It's kind of crazy. So here, John's asked me, would you rather have Digital Steve or AAA Alan Parsons given the choice? I mean, that's a really good question.
Well, AAA with the tapes back when they first were made, but I don't know if
but this box set was actually taken from, I think it was Wilson's daughter's collection, right? Because he had the master tapes because they couldn't find, so they used his master tapes to basically make this box set. So they're pretty fresh tapes. Good.
That's the good fresh tapes are good.
So you got fresh tapes on that box set. So I definitely recommend it. It's great. And I mean, like I said, I mean, at the top, I mean, I showed Eye in the Sky. I have my original, I mean, the Speaker's Corner version. That's the only Speaker's Corner cut that's not an analog cut. They use the digital master for some reason.
Well, and I'll be totally honest with you here, as a recording engineer, a record producer, just as a fan of making music and listening to music, if I could have a perfectly running AAA system from the mics all the way through the console, all the way to the tape machine, and I could fit it in this room, and it wasn't now 180 degrees in here, and I had a little tech waiting over there that could come out every single night on call and fix everything as it broke, which is a daily occurrence on these big consoles, I would love to do that. But that's rarefied territory right now. It's so expensive and it is so bulky.
So Jeff will confirm. Jeff is with Cooking Vinyl. He said the tapes, like I said, are Wilson's in very good condition. So you're getting this box.
Excellent.
Very high quality, first of all, and the tapes are in really good condition. It sounds fantastic.
That's good. That is good.
No, it's very good. I had more to ask you. I can't remember now. There's so much going on. Hang on. How does the latest release of IGY sound given the original digital? The latest release, I mean, there's a Bellman cut that was done a few years ago, and I don't have that cut. I didn't listen. I don't need another copy of Nightfly. I think that's probably where I'm at. I have the one step. I did have the original Mobile Fidelity half-speed one that I actually sold because I didn't need an extra copy. So I don't know if I need it. I know when I had Patrick Milligan from Rhino Hi-Fi here, we talked about Nightfly, and that's one that he has on his possible list of putting out. So I mean, that could be another hi-fi title in the future.
I've never heard anybody ever mention a bad copy of Nightfly.
There's no such thing as a bad copy of Nightfly.
I've never even heard of it.
They're just not. That's like that. I think Andrew brought it last week. The Police Synchronicity. There's not a bad copy of the Synchronicity cut either. I mean, those are all, and that's a Robert Ludwig cut as well. Those are fantastic.
Yeah. And it all started with Hugh Padgham, I think, did that record, right?
So Bellman commented on the Hoffman forums that he cut Nightfly flat for his cut.
It's a good choice. They knew what they were doing.
The Parson box is digital. Miles Scholl half-speed master.
And it sounds great.
I do. I like it. Yeah. I don't know the cost of it or what it would be, but I mean, if you're a big Alan Parsons fan, you want fresh tapes, half speed mastered by Miles Scholl. Not bad, man.
Look, it was very common in a lot of in very rarely after a certain point did we bother to mix down to analog tape. We would record through an analog console to 24 track 2-inch analog tape, mix it down through an analog console, take that stereo bus and go straight to DAT. Right? Digital audio tape, right? That was so common that almost every studio that I went into, that was the main mix. Now, could you pull out a half inch or a quarter inch? Sure.
Yeah.
And, but most of the time it was that, and it played back exactly like the stereo bus sounded when you were mixing it. And that was the reason why you didn't have to kind of go, what's this next tape generation going to sound like when we play it back? Because that does happen, right? So we were very happy to have DAT tape to mix down to, and it made it easier to press the CDs.
Get your thumbs up. I don't know how many thumbs up. We got to get some thumbs up on this, guys. Come on. Put some thumbs up. We love George. There you go. Or Mazzy was doing like he's doing the heart stuff when he was here and all that stuff. That's for sure. What's this here? Johnny C. You should get Kevin and Marshall on together and they can debate half-speed master. I'm not into drama. I mean, we know that whole thing. I mean, everyone has their opinion. Miles, he basically worked with Stan Ricker. That was one of his, worked with him years and years ago, and he believes in half-speed. Kevin doesn't. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's for sure.
And let's also go to this too. Every single technique ever in recording has its detractors and its supporters. All of them. All the way from mic techniques to the type of mics that you can use, down to the type of, I only use this on my kick drum. Oh, I only use this on my kick drum. This is my favorite compressor. This is my favorite EQ. I only use this kind of console. I only do this. All through all of it, every single technique, every single one of them has pros and cons. And the best thing to do is to not just kind of, I heard one and it sucked, and I heard one of these and it was good. That's not enough. That's not enough. Look at the technology, study up on the technology, and maybe you'll figure out why. And maybe you'll also find out that a lot of the time the mastering engineer is just doing the best with what they're given, and it's not always the best possible thing.
When I had Steve Hoffman on, one of the thing he mentioned about Led Zeppelin too, he said go to an original Led Zeppelin CD that came out whenever the CD came out. He says it sounds pretty similar to the Ludwig RLSS cut of the day.
Gosh, when would that have been?
84, 84, 85. So the original 84, 85, whatever the first pressing of the Led Zeppelin CDs apparently sound really good, according to Steve Hoffman.
Yeah. Jimmy Page disagreed.
Here's another thing. Okay, we're going digital versus AAA. Jimmy Page decided to remaster using the digital step for the reissues that Bernie Grenman basically cut using that master file. So, and Bernie Grenman didn't do anything. He basically told me when I talked to him a few years back that he got the file and just basically cut it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Page did that way back, 1990 or something like that. That first Zeppelin Crop Circles box set. He said, we're starting from the ground up. We're gonna get every tape we can get. We're gonna digitize them. We're gonna do it this way from now on. And then that was way back in the day. He started the remastering craze.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah. John Loper says in Miles's defense, he uses what they give him to cut with, and that's true. And I know, when I had Miles on, George, you were actually able to come on prior to me going live, and you were asking the same questions, and he actually told you that, if I'm not mistaken, in our little chat.
Absolutely. And he was very candid about the process that he uses. He was very candid about what he does. And he also said it right on the show. He said, look, most of the time I'm being asked to do something that I don't necessarily agree with, but I have to do it because, think about it. It's this way. It's like, it's like when you go back, let's go back to, I know everybody's sick of, I'm not going to name the album.
Asia.
No, I was gonna do the one before that, right? A couple before that. There's a person that owns the label, and they have the final say. And the mastering engineer does what they say. Whoever's in charge of that part, it's not the mastering engineer that says, I'm pushing my will on this record and making it. Sometimes they're trusted enough and they do some good work, and then they're allowed to let that pass. But most of the time someone listens to it and goes, I would rather it be like this. And it goes back and happens, right? Chad, he doesn't just listen to a lacquer. He literally takes that lacquer, gets it overnighted, goes out, electroplates it, and presses it and listens to an actual vinyl record and then goes, no. And then they do it again. I mean, that's rare. That's rare, but it's his choice. It's his company, his decision, not Bernie Grundman.
I think the only thing left, I mean, in terms of Beatles, we talk about the Beatles, a stereo AAA box set. Just get it out there. Yeah, that would be the last thing left. Again, people say, "Well, I got my BC13 blue box. I don't need anything else." But I mean, again, yeah, the tapes are a lot fresher in the mid '70s when that box came out compared to now. But I think you even mentioned on one of our shows that you don't think the stereo tapes are even good condition to even cut again.
I just think that there's issues with them, and I think some of them have been disassembled for different reasons over the course of time for compilations and things of that nature.
And I learned that too when Hoffman came on, when he basically did the Asia CD. He says the master tape was all sort of, it was all, I guess, cut up a little bit or not in pristine condition, I think is what he tried to explain.
Well, here's a question that I have right here. Here's the 2019 red and blue, right? Here's the analog 2019 red blue. Now, if this is analog and these are master tapes,
but where
did they come from?
But are they?
I don't know.
So that goes back to my point. I bet you it's a copy of. It's not going to be directly from. I think, for years and years they've made copies of the master to basically been able to master it their way and have chances to do that.
I think in most situations,
why run the master tape a million times? It makes no sense.
Sometimes what they'll do is how did they get the individual songs onto one continuous piece of tape? Sometimes what they'll do is they'll disassemble a tape and they'll take one song at a time and transfer it over. Sometimes they'll reassemble. Like they weren't thinking like this back in the day. If you remember, like the original Love Me Do was thrown in a waste paper basket, right? The original, some of these tapes have been, and if they didn't purposefully disassemble them, some of them become disassembled.
Here's a good point, VQR. Absolutely. I'm going to read this first of all, and I'll tell you, I would be surprised if the original Beatles stereotypes weren't in rough shape. The mono tapes at least benefited from being left alone for 50 years. Exactly, right? Because no one cared about mono up until 2014. I have them up here, the mono box set. So yeah, absolutely, that's the reason. The stereo, how many times do you think the stereo tapes have been run? I mean, you go to Discogs and look at all the different versions of the Beatles and every single album, we're talking thousands probably. So you're right, the tapes are probably in lousy condition. You probably won't see them again.
I think that the last time that they actually recut the Beatle catalog in mono up to this last box set was like in 1982 maybe or something like that. Yeah. And then they transferred them for digital after that. So
Charlie White saying, didn't the Beatles copy masters of digital? Back in '87 they would have, when because George Martin did the original remasters in '87 to digital back then. I even have I have an '87 digital cut of Abbey Road that George Martin would have remastered as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I really doubt that they went to 192.24.
Oh, I didn't read that part, but they definitely made a digital copy of those tapes at the time.
Absolutely. And they were pressing, and that record that I showed, this record right here, this was pressed. This is a Capitol record, but it's pressed from those digital files. This is a mono Hard Day's Night pressed from the digital, same source as the CDs. Now, the Andrew guy from Parlogram, that guy does really good Beatle content. That dude says that the best possible CDs that you can listen to by the Beatles are the original 87 CDs.
Okay, let me full stop you there. I mean, that was pretty much in my because '87 is when I first got a CD player, and I bought, of course, had all the Beatles on vinyl. So yeah, I have, and I still have all the Beatles CDs, my original '87s. They sound okay, but I mean, I'm not going to sit back and compare them. I like the mono. That's the problem. I like my mono box set. Now you're really comparing apples to oranges if I'm looking at my remastered '87 stereo stuff. I don't know. It's too hard. It's too hard.
The first 4 CDs are mono only. So you don't get stereo CDs of back in the day when they first released the Beatles, which was '87. They released Please Please Me with the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, and Beatles for Sale all in mono exclusively. They didn't put them in stereo. So you couldn't get those in stereo back then on CD.
So I bet you the tapes were good. That's why the tapes were not that good otherwise.
Well, there you go, Trey. That's again, that's it's a matter again of taste. And I personally haven't listened to those since 1987. So, but Andrew from Parlogram, who's pretty good, pretty knowledgeable about the Beatles, he seems to think that those are the best versions on CD you can get.
And they're probably pretty cheap to buy. So if you want to basically go out and run and buy all 13, would it be 13 of them altogether in 87? All the remastered digital CDs, probably a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and I'm sure that some of them are better than others. So
I can't imagine Magical Mystery Tour being very good.
Probably not.
I have it somewhere. I actually have all of them in my garage. I'm not going to run and get them in my Rubbermaid bins. I don't care. But yeah. Yeah,
no, I think if you know, everybody seems to want that stereo analog thing. From what
But who would cut it? Everyone would say, "Well, I don't want Miles Scholl to cut it half speed." I mean, you know. But the thing is, it's not up to Miles Scholl. Maybe Sean McGee cuts it. He cut the mono box set. Maybe he gets a chance to cut it. You know, I don't know. We don't make those decisions. We have no idea.
Yeah, it would be whoever they decide. I think that if they thought there was a reason to do it, they would have done it by now. You know.
And then, yeah, I mean, Stephen from the Buck Stops here. George Martin, he focused on stereo. I guess he would have obviously on those ones, mostly the 87 CDs.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the stereo, you know, the every single Beatle record was done in stereo. As a matter of fact, Please Please Me is actually a fold down technically.
That's right.
You know, they recorded it in the stereo, you know, with the vocals over here and the music over here. And then that got folded down in the console and that went to the mono tape in real time. They were like doing both at the same time. But on the other side, George Martin was enough into the stereo to where he remixed, what is it? Help and Rubber Soul in 87 for the CD releases. And so from 87 on, you couldn't get the original stereo mixes of Rubber Soul and Help. I think those are the two records. And he didn't do good because he was using digital reverb and stuff like that. Everybody freaked out about it. So. Yeah,
for years I remember listening to, I had the 87 Help CD in my car for years when cars had, although my new car has a CD player, go figure, but for years when one of my cars had a CD player, it had that in there. And it was funny because for some reason it wouldn't eject. So I left it for a full year. So when I turned the radio on my CD player would be the Help album. So I listened to that a bunch of times. And yeah, I always felt that it seemed off compared to the vinyl version, my original Help vinyl version as well. I couldn't tell you what the differences were now. It's been, you know, over 15, 20 years, but yeah.
It was I think an attempt to center vocals and things like that. And that's what everybody was mad about, you know.
Here's what John Lober, the tapes are still available to be baked and played copy them to a new AAA tape to cut off. So, I mean, this whole baking of tapes thing, you can only bake a tape so many times before really it might not really work again, right?
I think it comes down to the idea that you're holding a historical document in your hands and you're saying, I'm going to stick this in an oven now just to make a box set that 5,000 people are going to buy.
We don't even know how many were pressed for the mono box set. I don't even know how many pressed there. I've never gotten a number from anyone. I'm guessing probably 20,000, maybe 30,000. That's my guess. But I will tell you, in 2014, at the Costco I was at in Kelowna, British Columbia, there was a whole bin, and I have it right here, of my mono box. And I bought one. It was $240, $250 Canadian at the time.
It's not how much mine cost. Mine cost a lot more than that.
I haven't even opened up the book yet. I'm like OCD. That I'm like, should I take the cellophane off? Nah, I'm just gonna leave it.
Mine didn't cost 200 and something bucks. That's for sure.
But again, going back to the saying, and this is in Kelowna, BC. I mean, it's sort of the Napa Valley of British Columbia. There's a whole slew of them, and I'd go back, you know, I bought it right, obviously, but I'd go back and they'd still be a bunch there. So it took a while for those to sell.
And, you know, honestly, when I pull out a mono disc, I don't pull out any of the mono box sets. I just don't. I pull out originals. I don't.
So sometimes I wonder why we have these things, and just to say we have them.
People were raving about it so much that I was like, okay, I guess I got to have this. And I pulled it out and I put it on. I was like, this is not better than the one I have. It's good. It's fine. But I didn't need it. That was my point. I didn't need it. I already had, you know, the bases were already covered. Let's put it that way. So,
Steve and George, which albums are on your want list now? My God, I've got a lot. I actually have a lot that are not on my want list because I've owned them and went and bought them. I have nothing that I'm really like, oh my gosh, I need to own. Again, we talked about Nebraska's One Step. I'd like to have that, but not for what, $1,600 or $1,500. I'd like to have it for maybe I'd buy it for $400. Westman, you're dreaming. They're probably thinking, but I mean, really, I don't really need it. I don't. Do we need any of this stuff? It's. I don't know. It's a want, right? I mean, I don't want to get. I don't want to get stuck in that jail, the jail of want, right? I just if I feel I want to go out and get something, I will. That's why we have these shows. We had the show last week with sort of the budget cuts. That was really fun. I mean, there's a lot of good opportunities to go out and save a lot of money by getting great sounding stuff. I mean, like I said, Hoffman was even saying the original CDs of Led Zeppelin that came out sound really good. Even the Led Zeppelin 2, we all know the Robert Ludwig cut on vinyl sounds good. He says that one sounds just as good. So I don't know. Go have a look at that. Find it.
John, they're not running those tapes when we're talking about the Beatles. Those tapes are under lock and key, and like there's only maybe like 2 people in the world that are allowed to even go in the room where they're stored and look at them, let alone touch them. Those they are playing those tapes.
One of my interviews with Miles Sholey, basically we talked about that, where the tapes are stored and all that. There's only basically one gatekeeper to that whole area, apparently.
Yeah. Miles can't even just walk in there if he wants to. I think he made that pretty clear. You got to have permission.
I mean, this is one of the most historical pieces of tape boxes and tapes you'll ever have. I mean, it's the Beatles, that's for sure.
It's like a retinal scan and everything. I have a -5 Yarwood. The Yarwood cut of Rubber Soul is something that I'm looking for. That's for sure. That's a pretty penny.
Isn't there a hot cut of Rubber Soul out there as well? I've read.
That would be the original cut. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah, hot cuts.
It's the same exact Ludwig thing. It was styluses were flying off left and right.
I think I've seen those on Discogs for $60 and up. Would I be mistaken to say that was the price, or are they more than that?
Maybe a few years ago, but I think now they're a lot higher than that.
And after today, there'll be more. So there you
go. There goes my -5 chances too. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a hot. So that's sort of like the equivalent of the Rubber Soul hot cut would be the equivalent of the Led Zeppelin 2.
It's the same vibe as that they cut it. The Beatles were saying more bass. They did it, and the little dance set arms were flying left and right. Just the same kind of thing with Emmett Erdogan's niece was.
In these Beatles, I mean, even I don't hear the bass isn't. You don't really hear Paul's bass too extreme in any of these recordings either. By the way, I mean,
not until Revolver.
Revolver you do, but prior to that, it was really put in the back. I felt. I mean, his bass was really hidden between John's rhythm guitar and the lead in George Harrison's lead guitar. I really feel that way.
Yeah, when he switched primarily from the Hofner to his Rickenbacker,
yeah.
All of a sudden the bass took a whole nother role up front, and by Sgt. Pepper, he's like the leader of the band with that bass on that record. So,
there you go. Well, let's leave it at that. I think this is where we ran way OT, which is fantastic. So if you haven't, guys, thumbs up. Let's get this going here, man. Come on. Oh, look at this, George. Have a look at this. Do you remember this? The Sony PCM 7030, one of the earliest studio PCM recorders ever. That's cool.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah, absolutely. I have a soft spot for all that old gear because I used so many.
I bet you that old gear works really well too.
It has a sound, man. Some of it has a sound. It's like I used to use ADATs. It was super VHS tape, and you could record 8 tracks digitally on it. It wasn't the best possible thing in the world, but it had a vibe. It's like that piece of gear that it just has a vibe. I miss them.
So if you guys next Friday, week Friday, February 23rd, I'm having the CEO and the COO of Discogs on for a live Q&A and chat and viewer questions as well. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm excited about that. So thumbs up if you haven't, please do it. Thank you, George. This has been awesome. So again, did we solve anything? In the end, does it really matter, AAA versus digital?
I think at least hopefully what will happen is the dialogue will open up a little more, and we can get past that whole it's got to be this or it's got to be that, and maybe we can just judge.
And I showed you some goodies today. Some of my from my collection, and the new Gaucho digital cut is fantastic. Sounds amazing. Gotta get it. Have a good one.
All right, folks. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.
Bye, George.
Bye.